Hello guys, it's me. I'm aware that I haven't uploaded in a while, and I'm also aware that I don't think anybody's really noticed because I don't really have much of an audience or anything. But that's okay. I guess I'm just making these to talk. I'm gonna try not to edit this video because I really don't feel like it. Recently came to the realization that I have ADHD and I just don't like editing videos. Well, that's a lie. Whenever I start editing it, I get quite into it, but the starting part is hard. Alright, well today I wanted to make a video on experiences that I thought had validated my DID because, if anybody sees it, I think it might help. Also, just forgot, I probably should put on this lens so that I look how much better I look. Oh my god. Okay, so first one that I thought invalidated my DID was my relationship with my parents isn't terrible. Now don't get me wrong, it was terrible and there are still some things that suck, but I can generally have a conversation with either one of my parents, and especially with my mom. I actually fucking love my mom and I'm so happy with what she's done in the past few years to make things better for me. It's just during the start it wasn't the best, and yeah, so I never will have to explain to anybody why my relationship with my parents is okay, because that does not invalidate your DID. What matters was that your attachment wasn't maybe the best whenever you were growing up, from the ages of 0 to 7. I don't know for sure the cutoff, but the next thing that I thought invalidated my DID was that my inner world changes all the time. It's kind of, let me describe it for you, is that whenever I look into my head to see if an alter's close or if I can feel an alter close, they're kind of just floating around in this nebulous space. However, if I wanted to find an inner world inside, that's a little more difficult. I would have to sort of sit there and meditate and try to go within, and there is one, but it's kind of morphs around and changes and flips, and yeah, as far as the location of alters whenever they're not in my body, sometimes I'll be walking around and they'll be right beside me, or I'll feel them right beside me when they're co-conscious, or I can kind of see a room in my head where they're sitting right beside me, but and I know that that's their room, but that's not how it usually looks, so the inner world just kind of morphs around and changes, and it's bizarre because I've never heard anybody else with DID say that was their experience of their own inner world. So for a while I was like, oh my god, point one of why I'm faking, guys. The next thing that I thought invalidated my DID is that I don't get amnesia. Well, actually, very rarely, or not very rarely, but occasionally I'll get amnesia, mostly between me and my little. And this is, I still say DID because that's the most recognizable term, but there's a term for this called OSDD1B, otherwise specified dissociative disorder 1B, that I would more so fit under than DID. And that completely exists, and there are many people with that disorder. So no, it doesn't invalidate your experience. The next thing is that my alters didn't know that they were alters until I knew that they were alters. They were on the same page that I was. Of course, we all knew that there was something wrong and there was something really different about our head, and that we didn't feel like each other and something was going on, but we didn't know that we were separate people. We didn't know that we were alters. We just thought we were all one collective fucked up person. And yeah, I can remember Sam looking in the mirror and thinking, hey, that's that girl who's in my head, or some shit like that. And sorry. Yeah, it's like we knew that we were really different, but they didn't know, oh, it's because I'm an alter and I'm keeping this information from Elle. It's not really that. It's really hard to describe, but they didn't know they were alters until I told them, or I didn't tell them, but I found out. And then they each figured it out and came to me. The first one I discovered was Elena, and then Ginger realized, oh, so I'm an alter, and then she came to me, and then Sam came to me. It only took me finding out that I had DID for them to put the picture together that they were alters. which is not an experience I often hear a lot, because most of the time it's like, oh, all my alters knew and they were keeping it from me, which just wasn't my experience. We knew what DID was as well, but we all just kind of were like, we don't get amnesia, guys, we don't have DID, which is kind of a toupee fallacy in and of itself. So my alters, a lot of them came without names. So, sorry. You know, I call it the first generation of alters. The alters that formed in the DID forming age of 0 to like 7 were Alina, Ginger, and Augie. I used to think Ginger formed before that, but now I'm starting to put the pieces together and realize that that was not the case. None of them came with names. They were beings that had appearances and personalities, but they didn't really go by a name or think of themselves with a name, which I've never heard before. I always usually hear that alters come with names themselves. Now, Sam came with a name. I think Sam and Bridget were the only ones that came with names. However, a few years later, when I was like 13, 14 or so, this was still before I found out I had DID, those 3 alters, or minus Augie, found out what their names were, basically. Like Ginger, before I found out that I had DID, a few, like, I don't know, maybe like 5 to 10 years after she was created, was like, oh, okay, my name's Ginger. With Alina, there was kind of a set of names that she just kind of were associating with before I found out that I had DID, and we kind of settled on Alina once we concluded that that was the case. And Augie picked a name after we found out we had DID. Sam came with a name, Bridget came with a name. Nico, who is integrated now, she did not come up with a name. We had to negotiate that and find one for her. But for a while I was like, I don't have DID, they didn't come with names, come on. The next thing that I thought invalidated my DID was that I have a fictive. Now, I grew up in a family where everything was so very logical. Emotions and creativity weren't as valued. And so having a fictive just made me feel so stupid. I was like, DID already seems so implausible. So like, what? A fictive? Like, how is anybody supposed to believe that? How am I supposed to believe that? So Bridget is a fictive from the movie Ginger Snaps, which Ginger chose her name from because it's kind of a system favorite. So yeah, it's a movie that stuck deeply, so I can definitely see why an alter formed. They don't front all the time. Now I see lots of systems where their alters are coming out all the time, like they'll live stream and there's rapid switching, which is interesting to see, but you know, that doesn't usually happen. I can actually kind of control switches pretty well, so unless it's like an immediately triggering offending situation, I can pretty much control triggers pretty well. I can be like, oh, Augie likes that dog, I'm gonna look away and just kind of try and keep him out of the front because I don't want him in the front right now. That's not very useful. He's a 7-year-old boy and I'm like doing something that very serious or something. I can kind of control it. However, if it's like a triggering sad situation, it's hard for me to control switches. And because I can control switches, a lot of times I just don't let people in the front when I should, or just let them be because I'm scared of trying to, I don't know, it's like I kind of have like a control thing for them. Like I know they would be comfortable being like, hey, it's Sam, but I still get anxious about it. I don't know. I guess I get anxious about unpredictability. I'm getting diagnosed soon with some stuff, but I'm pretty sure that I have like a little bit of autism, and unpredictability and just explaining myself is so hard sometimes. So yeah, they don't front all the time because of that, and sometimes when I'm like, all right, I'll let someone front, it feels like I'm choosing. When I'm not really choosing, I'm just letting things be. So yeah. The next thing that made me think, the next and last thing that made me think I didn't have DID is that my alters, some of them have memories, and it's kind of hard whenever your alter's out and they relay something in conversation back to a memory that logically never really happened, but it's a real vivid memory, just as vivid as mine are to me, to them. And so I get a little anxious in my head because I'm like, if they try to explain this memory, what are these people gonna think? You know, it's like, God, I feel so fake right now. I feel like, how could an alter possibly create their own memory when that's not true? It's a common experience actually for alters to have their own memories, and it's definitely not an invalidating thing at all. I mean, if your alter has their own personality, sexuality, gender, style, a lot of these things that you form in your life, I guess maybe not like sexuality and gender necessarily, form from memories and experiences. So it's only natural for alters to, like, their individuality to start bleeding into having their own experiences and memories of themselves. And I find that the more developed and differentiated my alters are, the more likely they're going to have their own experiences. So mainly just Ginger and Sam, and especially Sam, have their own memories. Sam definitely has a very, very vivid memory recall of his life before being in the head. And so it blows my mind because I'm like, I want to know how he feels now to have this whole life and then just be landed here in this head and be like, so all of that was fake, you know? Anyways, I'm going off. But anyways, I just kind of thought that invalidated me for a long time. And there are plenty more little experiences that I thought invalidated my DID, so I would love to make a part 2, honestly. I have so much to say about it. But yeah, if any of these related to you, tell me, because I'm interested in hearing it. Thank you for watching. I hope that some of these helped you out and made you feel less invalidated. If you think you're faking your DID, you're probably not, because you didn't sit down and decide to fake it if you're having that thought. And thinking you're faking DID is a symptom of DID, so have a good day. I hope I hope everything goes well for you today, and that you're doing great. So I'll see you later. I'll try to. Bye.